I guess I shouldn't be surprised we never really know how many people to expect back here. Mrs. Entrup. Marge, dear. We got company.
More people? Les, it's a good thing we learned how to handle these hordes of people over the years, right, dear?
Yes, dear.
I mean, we had to learn how to handle all kinds of people.
Yes, dear. Lots of people.
We had to make lots of food and prepare a whole bunch of it in a hurry when it came to working for Mrs. Roosevelt.
Yes, lots of food, but nothing too fancy.
And thank God for that. You know, when my husband Les first came to inform me that Mrs. Roosevelt wanted us to cook for her on a full-time basis, I immediately didn't like the idea. What did I tell you, Les?
Well, you said if she wanted you to make anything fancy like pheasant under glass, you'd most likely say goodbye as quick as you said hello.
That's right. I don't do fancy. You want a meatloaf? I can make you a meatloaf. You want chili? I make the best darn chili you ever tasted. But pheasant under glass? How would you feel if the First Lady of the United States wanted you to come work for her? Would you feel up to the task?
But I reassured my wife that the Roosevelts were not known for their culinary pleasures. The president himself preferred a good hot dog to anything fancy. And besides, it's not like we were working at the White House. Though I had been Republican chairman in New Jersey, so I didn't think she wanted us there anyway. Charlie Curnan, the Roosevelt groundskeeper, asked me if I wanted to help him get the cottage at Val Kill ready for the Memorial Day weekend. That was 1956. And I thought I could use a little sunshine, fresh air. Why not do a little outdoor work?
Les had never worked outdoors before. We'd always been the kind of people to work inside, like in a kitchen. We owned a bar just down the street here.
Anyway, I worked for about 3 weeks, trimming hedges and raking leaves, and we had the place looking pretty good. That's when Charlie asked me if me and Marge here wanted to be part of the cooking team for the Memorial Day picnic.
We had no idea what was coming our way.
We learned they could be crazy times, but they were good times.
Ah, she'd really put me up a tree sometimes. We'd start out the day with Mrs. Roosevelt saying we had 8 people coming for dinner. Then she would go about her day, inviting every person she spoke with on the phone or ran into at the post office. Next thing you know, 20 people walked through that door.
Our first night on the job, I had to cut the roast so thin you could see through.
I'll never forget the time Nikita Khrushchev came. At least we had a proper warning of the number of people who were coming. But we were told that Mr. Khrushchev wanted no American food.
Mrs. Roosevelt said we had to make something Russian.
Well, all I know how to make is borscht. So we made enough to feed about 40 people. Guess who never touched the stuff? That's right. He simply picked up one of my dinner rolls and walked out the door.
The boys from the press took a picture of him holding up that roll with a headline that said, "One for the road."
Guess what we had every night for a week.
Oh, Lord, did we ever.
Mrs. Roosevelt turned to us for guidance on how to put together a large and pleasing meal. Pretty soon we got it down to a science, and we quickly felt at home.
Yeah, well, you know, we weren't the servants or the help. We were part of the family.
She always said, people work best when you work with them, not for them. That's how it was for us. It truly has been a blessing in this life. And look how far we've come.
Marge and I are originally from New Jersey. When I was a young man, I served in the First World War. I was in the cavalry, which was on its way out with all the modern tanks and automobiles. I served in the trenches. I was gassed. On top of that, I got scabies, which is horrid stuff. But it sent me home. I was lucky to get home. I'm sure I don't need to tell you the cost of that war based on some of the people you'll meet here tonight. Anyway, I come from a fairly well-off family, so I received decent care on my return.
My family were poor farmers in New Jersey. We didn't have much money at all. And I can recall that your mother didn't like it when we first got together.
I should probably tell you that I come from a German Lutheran background, and Marge here is Irish Catholic. I saw her for the first time decorating one of them fancy windows in a New York department store. Come to think of it, I don't even remember what store it was. I just knew I had to have the girl in the window. My parents disowned me when I married her.
After we were married, we came up to Arlington, where I worked at the Howard Johnsons on Route 44. And Les worked in an electrical factory. And we were blessed with 3 children.
Once we started working full-time for Mrs. Roosevelt, she asked us to move in at Valkill so we could all be together. Our kids grew up with Roosevelt grandchildren.
She even paid for one of our daughters to go off to nursing school. We begged her not to make a big deal of it, but she said she often sent checks to people she didn't even know, and she considered it a joy to help people she cared for. That just shows you how amazing she was. When she died, we mourned like we'd lost one of our own.
I was a pallbearer at Mrs. Roosevelt's funeral. It was a hard day for everybody, and everybody was there. President Kennedy, Truman, Eisenhower, and the man who would be President Johnson was there too.
And we moved down to Florida to work for her son Elliot, who was mayor of Miami Beach at the time. But it was nothing like working for Mrs. Roosevelt, where we were happy and loved. We were back up here within the year.
We knew Hyde Park was home, so it made sense for me to go to St. James. I joined the church, and I'd go on Sundays with Mrs. Roosevelt, and then I would go to the grocery market with orders from Mrs. Entrup.
Les is being too modest. He joined the choir here, you know, and he sings like an angel. Sing us your favorite song, Les, my love.
Ave Maria, gratia plena.
Have a lovely night, folks.
Maria.